Have you ever stopped to wonder why we place so many expectations on love? Why does it frighten us so much to see others in their purest form, stripped of their social masks, and even more unsettling? Could it be that what we call romance is nothing more than a carefully disguised psychological strategy? Nietzsche, with his razor-sharp tongue and uncompromising gaze, never gave in to the comforts of self-deception. He said, "The falseness of an opinion is not for us an objection to it. The question is, how useful is it for life? But what if its usefulness lies precisely in the idealization of woman, not as she truly is, but as man needs her to be?" Remember to subscribe, and your like is very important for the channel. We live in a culture that once idolized woman as a symbol of purity and now accuses her of being the root of temptation. Nietzsche refused to be trapped in this dichotomy. He went further, undressed the concept, tore the veil, and asked what lies behind the female figure that has been shaped over centuries. This is not a reflection for those seeking comfort. Confronting truth demands letting go of ease, but perhaps that is exactly where real freedom begins, for both men and women. This exploration of Nietzsche's views on the feminine doesn't aim to condemn or glorify, but to understand what he saw, what so many refuse to face. For Nietzsche, man, desperate for emotional safety, invented a woman who doesn't exist. He created a decorated mirror reflecting his need for redemption, beauty, purity. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he wrote, "Woman is for man a dangerous toy. She is not seen as an equal or a true companion, but as a figure molded from his longings and fears." The ideal of the woman as fragile, sweet, morally superior did not arise from love. It was born of fear. Unable to confront the untamed, complex nature of a real woman, man chose the comfort of fantasy, the muse, the saint, the savior. But is that truly love? Or is it a disguised mechanism of control? Nietzsche didn't hate women. He hated lies. And the lie that disturbed him most was this, that to love a woman is to place her on a pedestal. In doing so, man does not elevate her, he neutralizes her. He turns her into a marble statue, silent and still. This idealization stretches from ancient myths to modern tales, always swinging between savior and sinner, but never embracing her full humanity. Nietzsche saw this duality as a brutal denial of truth. To him, woman was not man's salvation, but his equal in chaos, a being of desire, strategy, strength, and mystery. Rejecting that is rejecting reality itself. "Truth is an army of metaphors," Nietzsche once wrote, and perhaps the most powerful and misleading metaphor of all is the ideal woman. How many relationships fall apart, not because love fades, but because illusion collapses? The man who worshipped purity meets a real woman, full of desire, contradiction, and power, and feels betrayed. But it wasn't her who betrayed him. It was his dream. Nietzsche urges us to look this tension in the face, not to destroy the feminine, but to free it from fantasy. To truly love, he believed, is not to find perfection in the other, but to stare into the abyss of their difference and stay. While men went off to war or took seats in parliaments, women operated in a different dimension, quieter, but no less powerful. Nietzsche saw something society still struggles to admit. Feminine power was never about weakness. It was a refined form of domination, an indirect authority that left no visible fingerprints. Denied official power, women developed fierce, adaptive intelligence. They became masters of emotional strategy, moving invisible chess pieces across the social board, not through commands, but with gestures, with absence, with calculated silence. Woman does not care about truth, only what is useful to love, Nietzsche observed, not as a moral attack, but as an evolutionary fact. In a brutally masculine world, her power had to be camouflaged. She couldn't rule kingdoms, but she could shape kings. How many historical decisions were influenced by a whisper in the night, a carefully timed absence, or a smile that promised what would never be given? Nietzsche didn't see these dynamics as petty manipulation, but as survival. As he said, morality is only the convention of the oppressed. Perhaps feminine power, too, was forged in the shadows, not from freedom, but from necessity. This subtle power is unsettling because it can't be caged. It has no form, no law, no clear lines. It seeps into glances, into guilt, into the unspoken. Nietzsche viewed it as almost mythological in nature, invisible, yet omnipresent. And here lies the provocation. Perhaps man's mistake was measuring power only by visibility, and woman's mistake, as he hinted, was forgetting that her strength was born from the need to survive, not from the freedom to choose. But now that this power is no longer hidden, what happens? What happens when there is no longer a need to seduce in order to belong? Nietzsche, always attentive to collapsing illusions, sensed that the unveiling of feminine power wouldn't bring balance, it would bring rupture. For him, love was never a safe refuge. It was an arena, a space where two forces dance under the illusion of tenderness while battling with sharpened instincts. Men and women don't come together in harmony, he believed. They collide, a collision disguised as poetry, candles, flowers. In true love, the soul spills over, and the will to power lurks beneath. This isn't a direct quote, but it carries his essence. Nietzsche believed that love wasn't the abandonment of power. It was its most sophisticated expression. In falling in love, we give up visible weapons, but keep hidden ones. Seduction, emotional manipulation, the expectation of salvation. He saw man as a naive idealist, kneeling before woman, not in reverence of her depth, but of what she represents: purity, meaning, beauty. He doesn't love the woman. He loves the idea. He loves the promise. The woman, on the other hand, loves with her feet on the ground. Nietzsche didn't describe her as cold, but as more instinctive. For her, love is not an escape from reality. It's a means of navigating it. To love is to survive, to secure territory, protection, advantage, not out of malice, but out of cultural, biological, and historical necessity. She knows the price of love. That fundamental difference, man dreaming of absolutes, woman reading the present moment, makes love a battlefield, each pretending to give while trying to stay in control. And so begins the theater of romance. Nietzsche despised it. He saw in it a denial of truth, a masquerade where no one dares admit what they really want. Power. Who sets the rules? Who needs the other more? Who can walk away first? And the most tragic part, when the illusion fades and the woman reveals her autonomy, the man doesn't understand. He feels betrayed. But once again, it was not love that failed. It was the myth he invented. He thought he could control the dance by bringing flowers. Nietzsche saw all this, not with bitterness, but with lucidity. We don't love when we find perfection. We love when we stop needing it. The tragedy is that few ever reach this point. Most cling to the game, the drama, the cycle of enchantment and disappointment. Love becomes a cold war of silences, strategies, unspoken desires. And in this theater, Nietzsche offers something radical. Drop the weapons. Love not as tactic, but as encounter, between two conscious wills, ready to see and be seen, unadorned. Nietzsche understood that humanity is built on masks. He didn't blame one gender. He saw it as a human trait. But in love, that tendency intensifies. Each hides their flaws, their hunger, their darkness, to protect the illusion. But what if two people dared to do something else? What if the man gave up being the protector and the woman stopped playing the enchantress? What if both chose to meet without scripts or strategies? Nietzsche would call that a miracle, a rare, almost tragic beauty. In Human, All Too Human, he wrote that the friendship between man and woman, if possible, is sublimated love. It doesn't mean the absence of desire, but the presence of something stronger, mutual respect for each other's wholeness. To reach that kind of connection, both must cross a desert. The man must let go of his idealization. He must see the woman not as savior, but as chaos, light, shadow, lucidity, and still choose to stay. The woman, in turn, must abandon the game of silent influence. She must believe that she can be direct, autonomous, and still be accepted. She must speak and be heard. Nietzsche didn't believe this was common, but he did believe that truth, though harsh, is the only soil where something real can grow. Become who you are, he said. It's a call not just to the self, but to relationships. Become who you are, even in front of another, with no need to please, no fear of being rejected. This type of encounter requires bravery, because without masks, there's nowhere to hide. And yes, you may not be loved for who you truly are, but if you are, then that is love, not social performance, but philosophical experience, a meeting of forces, not pawns in a game. Nietzsche never wrote to comfort. He wrote to shake. His aim was not to tear down women, but to free us all from illusion. Because ultimately, this isn't a story about women. It's about the mirrors we use to avoid looking inward. The feminine, in Nietzsche's view, was never an enemy. It was mystery, power, strategy, and above all, potential. But to see it, man must stop looking for an emotional mother, and woman must stop hiding behind her invisibility as a tool of influence. Only then might we meet as equals, not in form, but in depth. True love is the one that makes us grow, even if it hurts. Nietzsche didn't phrase it that way, but he lived it deeply, because true love begins after all the myths fall away.